long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away.
That Podcast Thing presents Home Movie Club, originally recorded June 2017. Episode number 7. I've got a bad feeling about this.
Hello and welcome to Home Movie Club. This time we've been watching 1977 space epic Star Wars. But will we all have been blown away by the 1970s special effects? Or will we all think this is just a little bit of poo-doo? I am delighted to say that, as always, I am joined by Joe Carter.
Was that meant to be a Star Wars joke?
It was a Star Wars joke, if you're into Star Wars.
Okay. Hi!
Daisy Swaffer.
Hi, I am into Star Wars and I didn't get the joke.
Poo-doo? How do you not know what poo-doo is? Do you not like Jar Jar Binks and his wonderful words?
Oh, no, I don't. That'll be why then.
Oh, babe, we're nowhere near Jar Jar yet. Can we,
And as always, as you can hear, that was my lovely wife, Sami.
Please no Jar Jar until at least we get to the episode 1, which I'm pretty sure that we're covering, but God, I wish we weren't.
We are, but it's not for a while yet.
Don't inflict Jar Jar isms on us when this is not a Jar Jar film.
This is not a Jar Jar film. Stop. Stop. Nope.
Okay.
We are putting a veto. We are banning Jar Jar isms.
Fair enough, but then I've got the editing control, so before we get into the plot of the film, which I'm sure most listeners will know quite well, let's see what our panellists thought of this sci-fi venture beyond the stars. Joe?
Well, I'm not a massive Star Wars fan. It was nice to, having watched Rogue One, see it sort of continue into this film. But I have to admit that I fell asleep at the end and woke up to the credits, so that probably sums up how I felt.
Dare we ask at what point you fell asleep?
When Luke was heading towards his Death Star, I can shoot down this hole because I'm so awesome.
Right, so not a lot, but not very much of a sleepness then.
Well, I don't know how long the film was after that. I mean, I've seen it before, but
you missed about 5 minutes.
Oh,
so.
That's okay.
The finale, basically, You missed.
So, Daisy, did you stay awake during this?
Woo! Yes, Star Wars!
Okay, that's fairly emphatic. And Sami?
It was fine.
Alright, just fine.
Oh no,
Yeah.
Oh my God, it was so good. I'm sorry, I can't do that with a straight face. I love it.
Okay, I figured as much because you weren't looking like you were bored when we were watching it, so...
Never!
Okay, so...
What did you think, Dave?
I know we do these podcasts and it's like, oh, I might have seen this film once or twice. With Star Wars, I was trying to work out how many times I have seen this film, and I'm slightly scared that it might be getting quite close to the 1,000 of times.
Wow.
This is a film that I grew up with. I was born in 73, so 3 years later Star Wars came out, and I've lived with it my entire life, and it has always been that one thing that I've always been into. So yes, I had all of the toys and all of the everything. I was the reason that George Lucas was able to make episode 1 because I kept throwing money at him. And even now I'm sitting here looking at my desk and there are just piles of Star Wars Lego and Star Wars figures, and it's just, I'm a bit of a Star Wars fan, so...
Well, that's good, because it's nice to have a film that you like.
So you quite liked it then?
I really enjoyed it, but that's part of the problem with this, is that I've watched this and indeed the other films so often that... And they have changed over the years. As I said, this is the original cut, and we are going to probably be pointing out where things are different. But, yeah, I know, it's sort of like, it's very hard to be anything other than gushing about this film. It's hard to be objective on a film that I've seen so many times.
That's
You
okay.
don't have to be objective.
Exactly.
When we're not normally objective.
No.
That's true. That's
It's
true.
an opinion. It's going to be,
Objectivity.
by definition, subjective.
So yes, Star Wars, and as we said in this case, not Star Wars Episode 4 A New Hope, because this is the original cut we're looking at.
Star Wars.
It is just Star Wars.
Star Wars.
There was no other Star Wars, this was it.
Was that because he didn't know whether he could make the other ones?
This is exactly right. This was a film made on a fairly tight budget, and there was no guarantee that it would be a hit. In fact, most people thought it would be a flop. and there was absolutely no plan to make anything other than this. This is a standalone film.
Yeah.
I mean, it has its own arc that, if there never was any other Star Wars films, would still have stood by itself. So yeah, this is just the Star Wars.
Yeah, and I do like that about it, that it was self-contained.
Yeah. So yeah, this is the original. There's no special edition extras and no dodgy CG or dodgy 3D stuff. As we go through it, I will try and point out where sort of some of the changes from the original had been made, because I'm sure quite a few people have only ever seen the special editions. They were released in 1977, so it's quite a while ago now. 20 years almost.
I wasn't alive.
40 years almost.
What?
Oh, you said
no.
1977. Sorry.
1997, sorry, for the special edition release. Originally released in 1977.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I was definitely alive in 97, but I wasn't alive in 77.
The special edition's released in 1997, and I say it's now coming up to, or just has passed 40 years anniversary of this film.
Yeah.
So
I went to see the special edition releases at the cinema, and it was so nice to get to go and see the original films at the cinema, albeit with bad editions.
Yeah, I saw Star Wars, as it was then, Star Wars Episode 4 A New Hope at the cinema as a special edition, but I didn't go to see the others. But I have seen all of these films at the cinema, sort of both Empire and Return of the Jedi when they first came out, because I am indeed that old.
That's okay. I first saw it in like 2001, 2002, somewhere around, when I was at uni, because someone happened to have them, and I was like, I've never seen Star Wars. So
I can't imagine that. I can't get my head around someone getting to that age and not seeing Star Wars.
Oh, there's a really easy explanation for that. I'm a Trekkie.
That's not mutually exclusive.
It was when I was young.
So yeah, Star Wars. Obviously, we start off with John Williams' iconic theme, as with the Harry Potter one last time. John Williams creating themes for major movies. And then we see huge panels of text floating through space.
I was looking at John Williams because this, for me, having John Williams do the score for this movie was such a crucial part to its success, I feel. And I was like, but how did George Lucas manage to afford John Williams on the shoestring budget? And then I was like, well, what had John Williams done before this? And I thought of Jaws. Jaws must have been before this, and that was a really iconic theme. But every other iconic John Williams score I could think of was after Star Wars. So he wasn't the giant of film scores that he is now back then. And that in itself is just like really shocking to me.
Yeah, I mean, before this, he was more known as a jazz musician than an actual composer.
Wow.
Yeah. Which is why when we get the cantina scenes later, they have jazz music. Or, as they call it in Star Wars...
Go ahead.
Jizz music.
Oh, no, really?
That is the official explanation. Jizz music.
Yeah. No, he's not making this up. They are a jizz band.
So a guy came up with that name, right?
I have no idea, probably. They probably came up with that name and then realised what else it meant. So, it's like jazz, but spacey.
Yeah, they just wanted to make it slightly different from, like, Earth jazz, and probably didn't realise that there were potentially other meanings of that word.
Anyway, where are we? Oh, yes. Space. The final frontier.
No! These are the voyages of the starship.
Hey, nope. No, they are not.
No, they are not. We start off with a big...
long time ago, somewhere far, far away.
A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. We have a vista of space that pans down to the edge of a sandy planet. A ship races through the screen, pursued by a large angular craft.
Whee!
Much larger, the ship just keeps on going.
God, that opening Star Destroyer just panning shot is really, like, because you see, what is it, the Tantive 4, the Princess Leia ship go first, and it's like, oh, look at that big spaceship. And then the Star Destroyer just keeps coming, and it's just like, oh my God, we're in space with no kind of frame of reference for size, and yet we get this real sense of enormity of this Star Destroyer.
Yeah, especially when watched on the big screen with decent speakers, it really does. It shakes the room almost. It's very impressive. So yes, laser fire is exchanged, although the smaller craft shots seem pretty ineffective against the whole of its hulking adversary. which, as we said, is an Imperial Star Destroyer. Smaller ship takes damage as a laser blast destroys its communication dish. Inside the ship, we see 2 droids buffeted by the violence outside. One, C-3PO, is a golden, slim and humanoid robot, while his companion R2-D2 is a squat blue and white pedal bin that rolls around on casted legs.
Yay! He's my favourite pedal bin.
He is the most famous pedal bin. They fret about their fate as the smaller ship slows and is consumed into one of the bays of the vast pursuing ship. Guards run to position to defend the ship before the main door is blown in and white-armoured stormtroopers stream into the ship, always crushing any resistance. Although how they can hit anything, no one's quite sure.
Well, the corridors are not very big, and it's packed full of the rebels. It's pretty hard to miss in those circumstances.
It is.
Yet they manage.
And yet you do get a shot, and this is in the film, where one of the stormtroopers runs around, turns to his right, and then somehow fires forward, and the laser blasts go upwards into the ceiling.
Impressive.
If you don't remember that, go and watch that scene again, because it does indeed. He's pointing his gun forward, the blasts go upwards. I have no idea. A tall, helmeted, cloaked figure, clad in black, strides into the ship. Stormtroopers snap to attention as Darth Vader surveys the battlefield.
Can we get some sound effects at that point of some breathing?
Yeah, his automated breathing cutting through the sounds of the distant battle. Thank you. C-3PO fusses, which is something C-3PO does a lot of, as he has somehow inexplicably lost his companion in the confusion. But we see a small young woman dressed in white pressing buttons on R2's panel before the droid rolls back to C-3PO. The lady disappears off into the shadows and the 2 droids head away. Darth Vader, the captain of the doomed ship hanging by his neck in front of the Dark Lord's hand, is told that the plans they seek are not in the ship's main computer. Enraged, Vader demands the plans from the defiant captain, who claims they have no transmissions and he is just on a diplomatic ship. Vader doesn't believe him and snaps his neck with his hand before throwing the lifeless body against the ship's bulkheads.
Vader is really bad at torturing people for information.
Yeah, he's got a bit of a temper on him.
Yeah,
I think he might be
do
a
not
bit.
kill them if you still want information from them.
He's got a temper on him, but I think he might be a bit evil.
Yeah.
Really?
No.
Well, you said the Dark
Spoilers?
Lord, so I immediately thought Voldemort.
Is that because in the opening scroll of the entire movie it referred to the evil Galactic Empire just to make sure we knew what side we were on?
Yep, I think that's fair.
We're on the side of evil,
Well,
right?
because he's also cool, and you could be mistaken into thinking that he's not that bad because he's cool.
Yeah. But they told us at the start, evil Galactic Empire.
I'm
so
glad
we
they
know
spelled that
it's
out
too
for
bad.
us, because I don't like people getting confused about these kinds of things.
Yeah.
Vader orders his troops to tear the ship apart looking for the plans, and that any passengers found should be brought to him alive. Probably so he can then kill them as well. In a darkened passageway, we see the troopers looking for the crew. The young lady steps out of the shadows and shoots one of the troopers before getting herself shot. The troopers blast her set to stun as she falls to the floor. This is the first and only time we ever see this function on any Star Wars blaster. At no point before or after has there been any use of a stun setting.
Not that we know of. Like,
Well,
all
no,
those
true.
rebels that we saw downed in the corridors before, like, there's no blood or anything. So maybe those phasers were set to stun, and we just don't know.
The phasers, I think
Blasters.
you mean.
Phaser set to stun is something very
Blasters
different.
set to stun, yeah.
No, they were all very dead.
But we don't know that. They could
This
just
is
be
true.
stunned.
The 2 droids are trying to get away from the troopers, and despite the protests of C-3PO, R2-D2 gets into an escape pod, claiming to be on a secret mission and carrying vital plans. C-3PO refuses to join him until a nearby explosion changes his mind, and the 2 droids shuffle into the escape pod and blast away.
Okay.
I like the way that we're starting the film with all this kind of hideous violence, but at the same time, we're getting the levity intercut with these squabbling droids. And I like the way that they did that.
I have a question though. If Leia's ship got swallowed by the big ship, and the droids got into an escape pod on the little ship, how did the escape pod get off the big ship?
Assuming that the escape pod's fired downwards, which would be the logical way to do it if you're flying over a planet and trying to escape as well. So it would have gone out of the ship. More important question is, where is the window they're looking out of? Because it's definitely not on the outside model.
It's very small.
On the command deck of the Star Destroyer, an escape pod is spotted and shot out of the sky, destroying the droids and the plans. The end. Okay, so that's obviously not what happened. Because inexplicably, the gunner is told not to fire due to the lack of life forms on the pod.
And they must be saving their ammo or something.
Yeah, it's just like, no, don't fire it. They would just save it.
No, that's plot. Don't touch that.
Free of the large ship, the pod falls down towards the desert planet below. The young princess, bound and surrounded by stormtroopers, is led before Darth Vader. She claims innocence, but Vader insists that the plans were beamed to the ship, and that the princess is a member of the Rebel Alliance and the traitor. Obviously, at this point, we haven't seen Rogue One, so we don't get that story. But that is padded out in the latest of the Star Wars films.
Yes.
And spoilers for later films, but why doesn't Vader sense the Force or anything with Leia there like he does Luke later on?
Good question. I suspect possibly because she's completely unaware of anything, and she is not...
She hasn't activated it yet.
She's not activated, she's not been trained, she's completely oblivious to the fact. But no, I agree, it's a fair question. And that's just one of many plot holes in this film that is,
You could drive
it's a
through
children's film.
with a...
It's almost like he wasn't planning for there to be loads of films interlinking and people would go through in tiny detail.
Yeah, strange that. Leia is taken away as Darth Vader and one of his commanders debate the wisdom of holding a member of the Senate and a Royal Highness as a captive, worrying that if word of this got out, then it could generate sympathy for the rebellion in the Senate. However, Vader has thought of this and says the ship should be reported as destroyed and all aboard killed. The junior... I know,
no.
because evil.
This is another way that we know he's evil. It told us in the opening scroll. He killed the guy he was trying to torture for information, and now this.
They're not trying to be subtle about it, in fairness.
Junior officer then reports that the plans are not aboard the ship, but an empty, in inverted commas, escape pod was jettisoned to the planet below during the fighting. Vader surmises that the plans must be on this pod and sends a detachment of stormtroopers down to retrieve them.
I'm not sure how they could have checked the ship that thoroughly. Like, every single possible nook and cranny in that ship,
Yeah, were they looking behind the toilets? Did they look in, someone's photo? Did they take the photo apart?
Did they check
to
under
find
the beds and behind the sofa? Down the
Yeah.
back of
The
the
air
kitchen?
vents and stuff, There's got to be a lot of places you can hide something like that.
Yeah, but, they were very thorough, apparently, so...
Very quick and very thorough.
Very quick and thorough. Planet side, we see the droids trudging away from the remains of the escape pod, bemoaning their changes of fortune.
Well, C-3PO was bemoaning.
Yes.
Squabbling.
This is the thing. Obviously, C-3PO has a human voice, yet inexplicably R2-D2 just beeps. There is a disagreement between them as to the best direction to travel, and R2-D2 and C-3PO split up, go their separate ways.
No.
C-3PO heads further into the desert until he spots a transport in the distance and cries for help.
I'm not sure why they bother, from a plot perspective, why they bothered having them separate when it makes no difference at all that they separated.
No, because they are pretty soon joined back together again.
Yeah.
But R2-D2 meanwhile has headed into rockier terrain and beeps nervously as small creatures watch his progress from behind the ridge.
A teeny!
Suddenly, a small cloaked creature jumps up and shoots R2-D2 with a disruptive electrical blast,
Yay!
immobilizing the small droid.
A teeny!
What
Who
they
falls
need?
over.
We all love Jawas.
Do we?
Yeah, they're awesome.
Okay.
Yeah.
Even though
Yeah.
they're small and smelly and full of fleas. And
They're small and they make cute noises.
Just like me, sweetheart.
other small creatures, Jawas, as we've said, appear and carry the disabled droid to their sandcrawler home, and where they attach a restraining device to the Estromech's chest and whisk it up into the bowels of the crawler.
Oh no.
R2 clanks down unceremoniously into a room containing many different droids in various states of repair or dismantling. The droid wakes up and chirps indignantly. This activity seems to bring many of the other droids to life, including C-3PO, who spots R2-D2 and happily greets him again.
Yay!
And
Pointless
a gonk droid.
separation.
Gonk.
Gonk.
Gonk. Gonk.
The best droid in
Gonk.
Star Wars.
Gonk. No,
Meanwhile-
genuinely my favourite droids. Can
Yeah.
we just dwell for a second on how much I love the gonks?
Sorry, the best droid in Star Wars? No.
Yeah. Which is the best droid in Star Wars, then?
BB-8.
No, he's not invented yet. He's not in this Star Wars.
Well,
Original
you said
trilogy.
in Star Wars, so I thought you meant the whole Star Wars universe.
Well, in which case, it's the little mouse one that Chewie growls at on the Death Star.
Yes, the mouse droid is quite cute.
No, Mouse Droid ranks just under the gonks.
What we were saying earlier about George Lucas not planning for fans to be poring over every single scene and every single detail in these films, we've just spent 5 minutes debating the value of the gonk droid.
Yeah.
And so
Which is basically a small person with a box on his head walking around for 3 seconds.
Gonk.
Going gonk.
How could you not love the gonk
me-
droid? I mean, come on.
Can you imagine being the person getting to say, "Oh, I was in Star Wars"? Oh, really? Oh, who are you? Would I have seen you? Yeah, I was Gonk.
They've probably done the convention circuit, Daisy.
They should, yeah. If they haven't, I hope they realise. I hope they listen to this, realise they should, and start doing the circuit.
You can
I'm fairly
probably
sure
pay
they have,
upwards
and
of £10
They
to get
probably
your
also
picture
were
taken with them.
Jawas and other small things as well.
Yeah.
So,
Weren't
Good
most
if
of
you
the
can get it.
Jawas played by children?
a lot of them were, yes.
Yeah.
Including some that were quite tall for Jawas. There are a couple of somewhat tall Jawas in one of the scenes later.
Giant Jawas.
Meanwhile, back at the pod crash site, a detachment of stormtroopers inspects the site and discovers that whilst the pod had no life forms aboard, it did contain droids.
Pretty
because they
obvious
could tell that.
footsteps.
Yeah. And yet they didn't follow the footsteps and find the droids about 10 miles away. The Jawa's sandcrawler stops and the diminutive creatures herd a selection of droids, including R2 and C-3PO, out into the bright desert sunshine. This is the homestead of Owen and Beru Lars.
Yay!
Hooray. We see the Jawas line up the droids and Owen and his nephew, Luke Skywalker,
Luke!
Yay!
inspect the droids before Owen selects C-3PO and another red astromech droid, much to the chagrin of R2-D2.
And Luke's
However-
aunt told him specifically to make sure any protocol droid could speak whatever language.
Bocce.
And he did not check that was the case at all because he is rubbish.
Although, to be fair, his uncle did ask the question before he had to bring
Yeah,
that up.
but he wasn't next to his uncle at the time, so he didn't know he'd been asked.
This is a good point.
This is true.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but he was sort of lazy and didn't want to be there, so...
He's just not made for farm work.
Clearly not.
Although I don't know how you farm and have harvests for things like moisture, which is just in the air, and you extract it from the air. A lot of things about this film don't make
This
sense.
was a long time ago.
Yeah, in a galaxy far, far away.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
However, before the astromech droid rolls more than a few meters, the top of its head pops off and smoke begins to billow from its innards. Jawas agree to swap the broken droid for R2-D2, and the two droid friends, along with their new master, Luke, head into the homestead.
Luke just takes the word of this droid he's just bought that this other droid is like, yeah, it's a great buy. Oh, okay.
Yep, and then about 4 hours later, the other droid is saying what a pain in the backside this R2 unit really is. So, yeah, you know.
Don't believe a droid you've just met, basically.
No. Luke sets to work cleaning R2-D2 while C-3PO receives an oil bath. Whilst cleaning the droid, Luke stumbles upon a holographic message that projected from R2's head. The image, fragmented and repeating, is of the princess asking for assistance from Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
Luke asks who the girl is, and C-3PO informs him that this is Princess Leia Organa. Asking if there's more of the message, Luke is told that the restraining bolt on R2-D2 is short-circuiting the recording system, but as soon as Luke pops the bolt off, the image disappears.
More evidence of droid lies.
Droids are tricksy characters.
Tricksy little droidies.
Luke is called away for food before he can investigate further, and as he walks away, R2 is chided by C-3PO for his obstinacy, because no one likes R2-D2.
I like
Apparently.
R2-D2.
Luke tells his uncle and aunt about the message and asks whether the Obi-Wan Kenobi in the message could be Ben Kenobi, a strange old hermit that lives out beyond the Dune Sea that inexplicably has a very similar first name and exactly the same surname.
See, I
Well
was
hidden
theorizing.
there, Obi-Wan.
I was theorizing
Well
last
hidden.
night that the only way that this could be plausibly like, oh, I wonder if he knows this other is that Kenobi is a really common surname, like it's like the Johnson or something of this bit of space.
Smith.
So there's just like a ton of Kenobis.
We don't learn that many kind of human type names, really, though, do we?
Sure.
Maybe on that planet it's really popular.
Yeah. Maybe Luke went to school with like 25 different Kenobis and none of them were actually related.
It's possible. However, Uncle Owen disagrees and tells Luke to get the droid's memory circuits wiped as they belong to them now.
And a suspicious overreaction.
Yes, because he recognises the name.
Luke bemoans the fact that he's stuck on a desert world while his friends have all gone off to do other things, but Owen says that he needs Luke for another year to help get the harvest in. A harvest of water from the atmosphere that you soak up at any time. Anyway,
Well, because he knows how much danger he's in and you know, wants to stop him.
Well, we never see the farming techniques to understand the harvest process.
but I am not blind to its flaws. I would never say that.
That's
I
very
don't
healthy.
think George Lucas was ever a particular expert in farming either.
No, probably not.
And
Not
the
so
harvest
much.
is a thing that you do with farming. It doesn't have to make sense.
True. And again, probably was expecting 1 or 2 people to see this once or twice, and that would be it. So Luke goes back to the garage area, but the 2 droids are nowhere to be seen. He activates a little controller that causes C-3PO to jump out of hiding. Luke asks him what he's doing back there, and C-3PO reports that R2-D2 has taken advantage of the removed restraining bolt and has gone off looking for Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Oh no.
Oh,
Luke
heck.
rushes out to survey the surrounding areas with his space binoculars, but there is no sign of the little droid in the gathering dusk. C-3PO asks if they should go and look for the droid, but Luke says it's too dangerous to go out into the desert at night due to the bands of roaming sand people, and they'll have to wait till morning. And at this point, if you had the VHS copy I had that was taken off the original showing on ITV of Star Wars, this is where the first advert break was.
Oh. See, I had it on Betamax, so I didn't have the problem of adverts.
Yeah, this was one of the first things when we first got our VHS. For some reason, Star Wars was on ITV at one point, and we recorded it. And I must have watched that tape until it almost collapsed.
Shame
And
it
that
wasn't
was
on
where-
the Beeb, wasn't it?
Yep, but that's where the first advert break was, and I always remember that every time I watch the film.
That seems like a good point for an ad break.
True.
Fun fact, the first thing that I ever watched on Laserdisc was Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope.
Laserdisc. Wow.
Oh,
It
There's
was
my
a
the
uncle,
technology
way
I never used.
of the future.
my uncle had a laser disc. They were like huge, weren't they?
They were massive. I had an aunt who worked for Pioneer, and so when this was like cutting edge, just about to be released technology, she showed it to us like in her house, and it was this giant thing. It was this huge disc.
Were they like the size of a 12-inch vinyl?
I think they were slightly larger than that,
At
but
least
yeah, they were
the
that
size
sort
of
of
a
thing.
12-inch vinyl. And halfway through the film, you had to flip it over.
Oh my god.
Yeah,
That's brilliant.
because you could only
wow.
contain so much data on one side of these discs.
Yeah.
It was
my
incredible.
Betamax version also was on both sides, so I had to be turned over halfway through. Was
Wow.
probably the same point in the movie as your Laserdisc.
Probably was.
I hadn't realised Betamax tapes were dual-sided.
Oh yeah. Yeah, Betamax were far superior to VHS.
Yeah, no, undoubtedly. As the sun rises, we see Luke and C-3PO rocketing along the desert in a battered, hovering landspeeder. The pair pick up a signal that could be R2, so head towards it. However, their movement has not gone unnoticed, and a pair of sand people, wrapped in bandages and wearing desert-coloured cloaks, watch the vehicle speed past through the canyons.
Oh no.
Da da da.
The landspeeder catch up with R2-D2, and Luke and C-3PO demand to know where R2 is going, and what he thinks he's doing. Defiantly, R2 claims he is following his mission, but suddenly he reports that his sensors are picking up several creatures approaching from the southeast.
Oh, noes.
The three head up a ridge, and Luke spots a couple of hairy beasts of burden, but no sign of anybody else.
He is really bad at looking out for things.
Yep. That just, farm boy ethic of not having a clue what's going on.
Yeah.
Suddenly, the binoculars are filled with an image of a huge sand person as it attacks Luke, who tries to defend himself with his blaster rifle.
It was literally walking up the hill right in front of him,
Yep.
and he missed it.
Not only did he miss it, but 3PO and R2 didn't bother mentioning it at all either.
Yeah. Because they're lying droids.
In the confusion, C-3PO falls back off the ridge, and Luke is knocked unconscious and dragged back to his speeder, where a band of sand people are looting through the contents of the speeder. Suddenly, there is a high-pitched growl that spooks the sand people, who run off.
Oh, no.
A cloaked figure picks his way across the ridge towards Luke's prone form.
Is that Obi-Wan that makes that noise?
Yes. Now, depending on which version of the film you are watching, because it changes very regularly, it's either a realistically sort of growly dragon noise, or a ridiculously large, high-pitched whistle, or something in between.
I thought maybe it was one of the sand people shrieking in fear at him, but it really didn't sound like a noise that should be emanating from Alec Guinness.
No, what it was supposed to be is the sound of one of the other local fauna that we didn't see in the film, which was a Krayt dragon, which is a big sort of dragon type thing.
Oh.
You do see the skeleton one next to C-3PO as he calls for help. That is what Obi-Wan is supposed to be mimicking, or rather this cloaked figure, because we don't yet know it is Obi-Wan, is supposed to be mimicking, and that's what scares off the Sand People.
I thought they were just scared of Obi-Wan because he's all badass Jedi man.
He is an intimidating fellow.
And that was his battle cry or something.
No, he just likes to make noises.
I'm glad. Thank you for clearing that up, because watching it with kind of paying extra attention in this viewing, that did make me go, what?
Hiding in a cavern, R2-D2 beeps with concern as the strange cloaked figure looms over Luke.
I like the way that you can translate the beeps as beeps of concern.
I think it probably says that in the subtitles.
They're very expressive.
And depending on which version of the edition you're watching, varies the amount of rocks that R2-D2 is hiding behind.
This is very true.
Really?
They added rocks in the remaster.
Yep. In the original version, he's standing there and he's clearly just standing in an alcove. In the special edition, they added some rocks in front of him to make it more hidden. And then when the DVDs and Blu-rays came out of the latest edition, they put more rocks in there to make him even more hidden.
But wouldn't that just make it far less likely that he'd have actually got there?
Please don't question the logic of George Lucas. That would go downhill big.
He's not really an all-terrain droid.
No, he is not. Figure hears the noise of R2 and turns to face him, removing its HUD to reveal an elderly, grey-haired but friendly-looking man. The old man beckons R2 to join him, saying that Luke will be alright. Luke wakes up to see the old man, who he recognises as Ben Kenobi. Ben asks Luke what he's doing this far out, and Luke explains that he was following R2, who was looking for his former master, an Obi-Wan Kenobi. Luke asks if Ben knows who that is, and if he's related to him. Ben admits that he does indeed know Obi-Wan Kenobi, and, despite Luke's uncle's assertion to the contrary, confirms that Obi-Wan is not dead, because he is Obi-Wan Kenobi.
I'd never have guessed.
Although he's not gone by that name in a long time and doesn't ever remember owning a droid.
And he says not since before you were born, and I'm pretty sure he was still going by Obi-Wan Kenobi after he was born.
Yep, and he also owned droids, so, you know, plot holes that are caused by this being written before any of the other films were put together.
I mean, you can retcon it as he's misremembering or lying at this point. But why would you pick, again, I just keep coming back to why would you pick Ben Kenobi as the hiding, you're not supposed to know who I am name, when you could
I have no idea.
just literally been anything else?
We can't criticise it that strongly, though, because he wasn't ever found.
Yes. I thought his name was Ben Kenobi and, like, Obi was a Jedi title.
Obi-Wan Kenobi was his actual name, and Ben was what he chose as a pseudonym. So yes, the conversation is interrupted by the sound of Sand People in the distance, and Kenobi declares that they'd better get moving, because although easily startled, the Sand People would soon be back. As they are preparing to leave in Luke's speeder, Luke suddenly remembers that, oh yeah, C-3PO. Completely forgotten about him. They find the droid, arm disconnected in the fall, and help him back to his feet, and they all go back to Kenobi's home. Did seem a bit, you know...
Aww.
Well, I think he's just a bit shaken up with the whole Sand People thing, and you know...
And the whole concussion thing.
C-3PO didn't care enough about him to warn him that the Sand Person was approaching, so why should he care about C-3PO?
This is true.
Ooh.
They are sitting in Ben Kenobi's home. Luke sits and reattaches C-3PO's arm. Ben and Luke discuss Luke's father, despite what his uncle has told him, was not a simple navigator on a spice freighter, but indeed was a Jedi Knight like Kenobi.
Luke takes this news remarkably easily, I must say.
He doesn't even ask what a Jedi Knight is.
Yeah, he's just like, oh, okay, cool.
The fact that his uncle and aunt have been lying to him his entire life is not even a problem.
Yeah.
Kenobi gives Luke his father's lightsaber, which Luke managed to activate and swing around without killing himself or anybody else.
Or removing any limbs.
He's a natural.
He then asks Kenobi about his father's death. Kenobi tells him that his father was betrayed and murdered by Darth Vader. He was a pupil of Kenobi's until he was seduced by the dark side of the Force.
But we've already seen him in the film.
So yes, then he goes on to explain that the Force is a mystical energy field that gives the Jedi their power and has nothing to do with midi-chlorians.
The Force surrounds us, it penetrates us, and it binds us together.
And I may have giggled at penetrates just because.
I was trying really hard to be serious about that. I didn't say anything while we were watching.
Well, I'm here to lower
but
the tone,
it was a struggle.
We used a modified version of that line in our wedding vows, but we did remove the word penetrate.
Oh, come on. It's the best bit.
Yeah.
R2 shows Ben the recording from Princess Leia, who implores Kenobi to help deliver the droid to Rebellion. Kenobi tells Luke that he should learn the Force if he is to follow Kenobi to Alderaan, but Luke says he cannot assist as he has to go home and help his uncle on the farm.
I think that's really, like, he's got a good sense of responsibility there. He's been desperate to get away. There's an excuse popped up for him here, and he doesn't just go, great, yeah, I'll come. He goes, no, I am needed. I will stay here. Boo.
It's true, although equally he has no idea what the Force is. He heard about it 2 seconds ago. He doesn't know who this person really is. He's only just met him. He's a bit kind of, come with me to this strange planet. It's like, maybe not. So he does, however, agree to take Kenobi to Anchorhead to get a transport from there to Alderaan. We cut to space, see a big black metal sphere floating. This is the Death Star.
Yay!
The massive Star Destroyer looks diminutive as it flies towards the vast battle station. Vader and Admiral Tarkin, played by Peter Cushing,
Yay.
enter the meeting room. Several high-ranking officials sit around a large conference table. I was making notes as I was going along and writing this up, and there's an awful lot of action that happens in conferencing rooms. It's just a bit like work, really.
They're all British and
depressing.
they're all posh in this room, and that's another way that they telegraph to us that they're evil.
Yep, because if you're British, you're evil, obviously.
British and posh together is like your ultimate evil combo.
Yeah.
Unless you're Obi-Wan Kenobi, who is both British and posh, but...
Yeah, but maybe he's evil.
True. Several high-ranking officials sit around a large table. Tarkin informs the meeting that the Emperor has just dissolved the Senate, and that the direct governors will now control their systems with the help of the threat of the Death Star.
Do you know, I never really take in what they're even talking about in that room. No matter how many times I watch this film, anytime they're talking about senates or anything like that, then I'm just like, tune out. Oh, the bad guy looks cool. I wonder if he's going to force choke someone.
Basically, the thrust of the plot is the Senate's been disabled, and if we've got the Death Star, we've got the biggest stick, so therefore they'll do what we tell them.
It's all about the size of the gun.
Yep. Admiral Motti, who must be the stupidest of admirals in the Imperial Navy, questions Vader's efficiency in regaining the Death Star plans and is force choked for his laugh.
He mocks Vader. That's what
Yep.
he does. He mocks Vader. Like, what? What is wrong with you?
I mean, this is 20 years after the fall of the Jedi, so he must have been around when the Jedi were at their height.
Yeah,
during the Clone Wars.
Very
He
much
must
within
know,
living memory.
Yeah, he must know that this stuff is actually true. So yes, he gets force choked for his lack of faith and, frankly, stupidity.
A well-deserved force choke, I
A
think.
well-deserved force choking. Tarkin reassures the gathering admirals that the plans will soon be back in their control and that the rebels will soon be crushed.
We've heard that before. Oh, wait, no, this is the first one.
On their way to Anchorhead, Ben, Luke and the droids come across a scene of carnage. The Jawa sandcrawler is burning and there are Jawa bodies scattered everywhere.
The poor Jawas. They've uttered their last utini.
Ben is sure that this is the work of Imperial stormtroopers because apparently they can hit anything. Oh no, hang on. I wonder if that's just because the sandcrawler is literally larger than the barn door, so they could hit it. Luke realises that these are the Jawas that sold the droids to the Lars family, and so rushes back to the homestead to see plumes of black smoke billowing from his home, and the charred and crispy remains of his aunt and uncle lying at the entrance to the farm.
When I was a
Ew.
kid, I used to go round like friends' houses, and there was a couple of lads I used to go around, and we'd put Star Wars on, and we would always pause it on this scene so as to marvel at these kind of charred but still gunky skeletons that were still smoking on the ground.
That's
And I have
gross.
this really
Oh my
vivid
God.
memory of just like having it every time paused and just like poring over this scene.
Why?
Because in films aimed at kids, you didn't tend to get charred, gunky skeletons.
Fair enough.
This is true.
In the stark metal corridors of the Death Star, Darth Vader and a team of technicians enter a small holding cell occupied by Princess Leia. Following Darth Vader is a floating droid. Cruel needles and pincers adorn its outer casing.
It's a torture droid.
A look of horror passes the princess's face as Darth Vader asks her for the location of the hidden rebel base.
I do wonder what's in that needle. Like, is it something that's gonna just inflict a lot of pain? Is it like a truth serum? Is it gonna knock her out?
Well, we
I
don't
mean,
know,
it's referred to
because
later as the
door
mind
closes
probe, so...
ominously.
Mind probe. So like a truth serum then, but it obviously doesn't work that well on her.
Back on the desert planet of Tatooine, Luke heads back to the Sandcrawler where Ben and the droids are inexplicably burning the Jawas' corpses. Saddened by his loss, but not that saddened, really.
He really doesn't grieve at all. He spent his entire life being raised by this pair, and he never grieves for them in this film at all. He's just like, okay, adventure then.
Yep, he agrees to join Ben on his trip to Alderaan. They stop and overlook Mos Eisley, where Ben Kenobi extols it as being a hive of scum and villainy.
Sounds like my kind of place.
Oh yeah, for heading into the busy streets of the city. Although, not that busy, because this is before George Lucas ruined it by sticking lots of rubbish aliens in and getting in the way of the programme.
Yep.
They do not get far before being stopped and questioned by a squad of stormtroopers. They ask some inconvenient questions, but Kenobi is able to use the Force to influence the stormtrooper commander, and they are allowed to pass into the city.
Yay.
With an iconic line.
Move along.
So, yes, they go in and they park outside the entrance to a cantina bar. Chalmun's Cantina, apparently it's called. It's a dark and dingy place filled with alien species from 100 different worlds. A Bith band plays jizz music. Oh yeah. So yes, the Bith band play jizz music from an alcove of the cantina. However, when C-3PO and R2-D2 enter the bar, there is an alarm sound, and the bartender gruffly informs Luke that the droids are not allowed in the cantina.
Why is that?
Because they need the droids outside from a plot perspective to tell them the stormtroopers are coming in. Or rather, to tell us that the stormtroopers are coming in. I don't know why droids are not allowed into a bar. Perhaps they're just droidist.
They take up space and don't drink drinks.
This is also true.
This is true. This is true.
The droids
Maybe-
wait outside
Yep.
while Kenobi strikes up a conversation at the bar with a 7-foot-tall hairy Wookiee, Chewbacca. Slack-jawed because he's just a yokel, Luke stands by the bar and orders a drink.
Well, he sort of yanks the bartender's sleeve and sort of shrugs at him and then gets a cup. It's really weird.
That's how it works in
Some
space
awkward
bars,
business.
obviously.
It's just the Mos Eisley way.
You know, you've been into a Starbucks and there's 1,001 different options for coffee. You just stand there slack-jawed. And that's what's happening here, I think.
Yeah.
You know.
Walrus-like, is that what we're saying?
Well, in the original canon action figures, he was called Walrus Man.
Okay.
But his name is Ponda Baba. Kenobi intervenes and Luke is dashed across the cantina by Evazan. Both thugs draw their weapons, but Kenobi pulls out his lightsaber and dispatches the two thugs. Baba losing an arm and Evazan being slashed across the chest by the glowing blade. Their fate is at that point unknown.
Well, it cauterises the wound when it goes through, doesn't it? So.
Well, you say that, but there was quite a lot of blood on the floor of the severed arm. So.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Well, I guess because the blood is... Oh no, it would be cauterised on both sides, wouldn't it?
Yes, it should be.
Maybe he
But
had
again-
it set to not cauterise. So, like, the set to kill equivalent of, I don't know.
Set to hack. So Luke is assisted to his feet by Kenobi before they are both led to a booth near the rear of the cantina by Chewbacca. Waiting outside, the two droids spot a cantina patron speaking to a passing stormtrooper patrol. Luke and Ben are introduced to Han Solo, a cocky, self-assured Corellian pilot of the Millennium Falcon. They ask him for passage to Alderaan, but ask to avoid any Imperial entanglements. Solo retorts that this is the real trick and that will cost them extra. 10,000 credits, all in advance. Luke is stunned by the outrageous price and makes to leave. Kenobi stops him and makes a counteroffer. 2,000 up front and an additional 15,000 when they are safely delivered to Alderaan. Solo agrees, telling them to meet them in Docking Bay 94. But then he notices the stormtroopers entering the cantina bar, and Ben and Luke leave and head out in another entrance, which we never see them leave and we never see the other entrance. But
It's an exit
that's
if
always
they're
true.
going out. Just
This is true. Out of another exit.
sorry.
It's an entrance into the outside world, surely.
Yeah.
The troopers stare at Solo and Chewbacca but pass them by. Solo quips that 17,000 could really save their neck and tells Chewbacca to get the ship ready to leave. However, just as Solo is ready to leave himself, he is intercepted by a green, reptilian-looking alien, Greedo.
Yay, Greedo.
Yay, Greedo. Greedo points a blaster at Solo and ushers him back into the booth. Local crime lord Jabba the Hutt has put a bounty on Solo's head after Solo was forced to dump a smuggling cargo when boarded by an Imperial ship. Greedo wants to claim this bounty for himself, But Solo gets his hand under the table, unholsters his blaster pistol, and nonchalantly shoots Greedo dead before Greedo has a chance to fire off a shot.
He's not a true hero. That's how we know. He's like an anti-hero.
Because Han shoots first.
Yes.
Han shoots the snow first.
Yeah, Han shoots.
Han
Han shoots
shoots.
the alien, is what the script said.
Yep, alien. Han Solo then gets up, pays the barkeeper for the mess, and leaves the cantina.
He apologises for the mess, which I thought
does.
was, nice.
He's very nice about it,
Because
Yeah.
anti-hero, but still that aspect of hero.
Yeah, true. Back in the Death Star control room, we see Tarkin, Vader, and Tag discussing the fact that Leia has been able to withstand their questioning, and they have yet to find the rebel base.
Because she's awesome.
Because she is awesome. Tarkin suggests a new form of persuasion and orders Motti to set the Death Star on a course for the Alderaan system.
Oh no!
Luke and Kenobi haggle with a used speeder dealer to get the best deal for Luke's old speeder. They manage to scrape the credits together and head to Docking Bay 94 to meet up with Solo and Chewbacca. However, they are spotted by a strange black-beaked alien who chirrups into a small handheld communicator. They meet with Chewbacca and walk down to a landing bay where Han Solo and the Millennium Falcon await them. However, Luke is less than impressed with the Falcon, declaring it a piece of junk.
Not the first time, but... Oh, well, I guess that is the first time. Oh, the first time of many that it will be called that.
Indeed. And also, it's incomplete, because if you look at that, even in the special editions, the radar dish on the top of the Millennium Falcon is missing.
So it really is a piece of junk.
It really is a piece of junk.
Just
An
a
incomplete
fancy
piece of
piece.
junk.
But it did the Kessler
Yes.
run in 12 parsecs.
So yeah, Solo defends his ship, saying that although it may not look like much, it has the speed and manoeuvrability that counts. Outside the docking bay, the strange beaked alien meets up with a squad of stormtroopers and directs them into the docking bay. Kenobi, Luke and the droids are just getting onto the ship when they are interrupted by the stormtroopers. Han starts to shoot at the troopers before running off the ship and blasting off. Leaving the planet, the ship is tracked and then intercepted by 3 Imperial cruisers. The Falcon shudders under fire as Solo and Chewbacca try and evade the ships long enough for the navigational computers to calculate the route through hyperspace to Alderaan. The ship takes more hits before finally breaking free of physics and escapes into hyperspace.
Yay!
Physics schmizzics.
Yay.
Who needs physics anyway? This is space.
Tarkin greets Princess Leia on the command deck of the Death Star, telling her that unless she tells him the location of the hidden rebel base, he will destroy Leia's home planet of Alderaan.
No! How could he destroy a whole planet?
Because he's evil!
Is the Death Star that powerful? Oh my god!
Leia crumbles and tells Tarkin the location is Dantooine, but he continues with the operation and the Death Star unleashes a huge beam of energy that destroys Alderaan.
This is his
What a
first
douche.
planet blowing up shot. Nothing was going to stop him from actually blowing up
That's
the planet.
right, you
No,
know.
he was like totally looking forward to that. Come on.
It was like
was
all of
working
his
up to this.
Christmases all together.
He was working up through this all the way through Rogue One,
Yeah.
which we haven't seen yet, and at this point hasn't been made.
Yeah, I think Leia missed the number one rule when dealing with bad guys. If they say that if you tell me this thing, then I will spare XYZ, never believe them. Because they won't. They're gonna kill them, kill you, whatever anyway.
She couldn't have lived with it on her conscience had she have not done what
But
she could
even
there.
Tarkin said she was far too trusting, so, you know. Back on the Falcon, Kenobi senses something in the Force, but bids Luke to carry on his practice with a lightsaber.
Oh, it was like a million voices cried out in terror and were suddenly silent. How many people were on Alderaan that were just destroyed like that? Poof.
According to Wikipedia's 2 billion.
That's a lot of people.
It's a lot of people, but it's a lot of a nice round number of people, so, you know, it's an average of, I suppose.
Approximately, but
Well,
that's a lot of people.
At this point,
That is-
highest death count of a film we've watched so far.
Indeed. Possibly highest death count of any film we're going to watch.
Yeah.
It's certainly up there.
Although we are going to be watching at some point The Force Awakens, and that has several planets being blown up, so Lord only knows
Yeah,
what the death
that's-
count
We'll
of
have to
that one is.
Wikipedia the populations of those places.
Yep.
Star Wars in
Cosmic.
general, pretty high death counts.
Yep, almost as if the phrase titled Wars is taken literally. Luke carries on his practice with a lightsaber and a floating remote practice drone. Luke takes a stinging blast from the droid, bringing a wry laugh from Solo, who doesn't seem bothered about the fact that he's in a sealed metal container in space with a boy who's never used it before, waving around a laser sword that can quite easily cut through metal. To be honest, I'd be slightly more concerned about that than Han seems to be.
Han's a pretty chill guy, though.
He is pretty
Yeah.
chill.
True. He doesn't believe in the Force, so, you know, he's wrong.
Well, like, objectively he is, because look what Force does in this movie franchise.
In an attempt to show Luke the realities of the Force, Kenobi puts a blast-shielded helmet onto Luke's face, obscuring his vision. After a failed attempt at stopping the blasts, Luke then manages to deflect a volley of 3 shots from the drone. An act that Solo puts down to luck, although Kenobi says he believes in the Force and there's no such thing as luck.
Given how terrible he was when he could see, and he was only any good when he was using his other senses and or the Force, then, you know, I think that is more than luck.
Yeah.
Yeah. Back in the Death Star conference room, and we're back in the conference room again, we see Tarkin being informed that although there are remains of a rebel base on the location of Dantooine provided by Princess Leia, there is nothing there now.
She lied!
Angered by this, Tarkin orders the princess's execution. Execute her immediately. And then 20 minutes later, she's still not dead.
But they scheduled her execution immediately.
We can fit you in for, let's say, 3:30 next Friday. Does that sound alright to you?
Well, we
Bureaucracy
hear on the computer systems that she's scheduled for execution, so that must be what they did. Execute her immediately to them meant schedule her execution immediately.
Yep. Drop it into the Outlook calendar. Save it going.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Let's just run a doodle
if
poll
you're
to see
doing
when
an
everyone's available for the
execution,
execution.
You want people to be there. You want a crowd. You've got to give people a bit of notice. So yeah,
that's true.
Got to get
Yeah, you gotta
the
send out
emails out to
evites
everyone.
There's probably
get
some red
everyone-
tape involved.
Oh my god,
Millennium-
you're definitely going to have to fill out some forms.
Millennium Falcon drops out of hyperspace, but instead of Alderaan, it is greeted by a large and uncharted meteor shower. However, to the confusion of the crew, despite their location being correct, there is no sign of Alderaan. Kenobi says he believes that it's been destroyed by the Empire, although Solo disagrees, saying that there's not enough firepower in the whole Imperial fleet to destroy a planet.
Once again, Han Solo is wrong.
He's wrong a lot.
Yeah.
He is like,
He's like there to be the voice of skepticism in spite of like glaringly obvious evidence to the contrary.
He's a smuggler.
Yeah.
He's
He's
not
a troll
really
on the
known for his
internet.
smart.
Let's be real. Han Solo has not been to college.
suddenly an alarm alerts them to the presence of another ship in the area. A small one-man Imperial TIE fighter screams overhead and races away from the freighter.
But that's a short-range fighter.
Solo tries to close the range, hoping to destroy the fighter before it reports their position to anybody. As it races towards a small moon, it becomes clear that it is in fact
That's no
heading towards the
moon!
Death Star.
It's a space station.
They try to run, but have been caught in a tractor beam. They're basically being pulled into the station. The freighter is dragged into a hangar bay and surrounded by stormtroopers. Back in the conference room, Tarkin is informed of the fact that a captured ship matching the one that blasted its way out of Mos Eisley has been captured. Vader suggests that they are trying to return the plans to the princess and that she may yet be of some use to them. So, does that mean she's not scheduled to be executed, or if they just put a pin in it and will wait for a bit?
Well, they're
or...
probably glad that they haven't actually executed her yet, but they've just scheduled
Yeah. I mean, what if they were like,
Yeah.
Maybe he said, execute her now, and then once she was out the room, he was like, so I didn't mean now, I just wanted her to think now.
I mean, this is getting into a bit Blackadder territory of executing people.
This is true.
Vader heads down to the hangar himself and is informed by the duty officer that the ship is empty, with no one aboard and no sign of droids. However, Vader senses something in the Force and so orders the whole ship to be checked by a scanning crew. On board the Falcon, we see troopers searching before heading back down the boarding ramp. In the special edition, they look at each other and the troopers say, "There's no one here," which is the most obvious thing and pointless thing you have to say.
Why did they insert that?
I don't know, because it's obvious no one's there because they're leaving. As they clear the ramp, a section of the floor lifts and Solo, Chewbacca and Luke emerge from a hidden smuggling compartment beneath the deck. A second panel shifts and Kenobi emerges.
This is the same level of searching that they did on the Tantive 4 at the start when they declared that the plans to the Death Star weren't on there anymore, and so they must have gone off with that droid.
Yeah, and they didn't even, I mean, they have not got the scanning crew in yet, but they've got these compartments that are used for smuggling, and they seem to be quite effective at hiding humans from, from people looking. So why was Han bothered about being boarded when he was smuggling cargo?
Yeah.
Surely they would have been safe anyway.
Yeah.
I suppose it depends what the cargo was and how big it was and if it was detectable by something.
Solo is worried that any escape attempt would be followed by the tractor beam, but Kenobi says that leave that to him.
He's got this.
Yeah.
He's got this. It's fine, guys. I've got this. It's all on me. Outside, on the boarding ramp, a couple of technicians struggle to manhandle a heavy crate of scanning equipment up into the ship. There is a clatter as they disappear from view, and then a voice asks the two stormtroopers posted as guards at the base of the ramp to come up and give the technicians a hand. The troopers head up the ramp, and then muffled blaster fire can be heard. Although, quite obviously can be heard. And also, the person asking them for help has an American accent. And at this point, almost all, if not every single member of the Empire is British. So, you should probably note that one as well.
Stormtroopers, again, not known for their intelligence or, thinking on their feet.
True.
They just generally tend to follow orders.
In the control room for the hangar bay, a stressed junior officer tries to raise the ramp guard to see where they've gone. When they don't answer the call, he moves over to a window and looks down onto the ship. As he looks, a lone stormtrooper emerges and indicates that the communicator on his helmet is malfunctioning. Acknowledging this, the junior officer makes to head down to the hangar to assist. However, as soon as he opens the door, he is struck by a large hairy arm as Chewbacca flings him across the room.
How did they get there so quickly?
Yeah, you don't know how long it took them. And also, how did they know whether that was the control room? Again, so many questions.
Is there a sign, on the door that says this is the control room? Or, signs in the corridor saying, this way to the control room?
Could be.
The Empire are, quite an organised bunch, and the Death Star's pretty huge. They will have needed very good signing on that.
They probably have, when you go into, a shopping centre and they've got that little sort of floor plan out, sort of quite close to the front end.
Yes.
You are here, and then it's sort of, you can kind of figure out how to get to...
Yeah, and then the other signs along the way as well.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
Yeah.
I think they probably got a system like that.
Yeah.
But that doesn't explain how they managed to get to the door by the time the officer got to the door when he had much less far to walk.
Maybe he went to the toilet first.
You don't get to see that bit.
Yeah. It was literally turn around, walk to the door. I mean, it was 6.
Yeah, but we only saw one stormtrooper. The other ones had already made their way up there.
Okay.
The other officers look up in surprise as they see their colleague thrown across the room before being blasted by a stormtrooper. The stormtrooper removes his helmet to reveal Han Solo, as the droids Kenobi and Chewbacca join him. A second stormtrooper runs into the room and closes the door. Luke takes off his stormtrooper disguise helmet and complains about how much noise they're making. R2 plugs himself into a computer socket and begins looking for the controls to power down the tractor beam. He finds them, and Kenobi heads off into the bowels of the Death Star to locate and disable the power beam.
He could have just followed the signs and the floor plans.
Yeah, because, to be honest, what they were showing on the screen was hardly descriptive.
Yeah.
Seriously.
It wasn't a map saying, you are here, go here. It was just random schematics.
Yeah, I reckon he probably just followed the signs when he went out. He was just letting R2 feel useful, when actually he was just going to follow the signs anyway.
The rest of the merry band settle in to wait in the control room, but R2-D2 starts beeping wildly. C-3PO translates and informs them that the princess is being held in the Death Star and is scheduled to be terminated.
Then we get our clearest view of the fact that Luke is a Gryffindor and Han is a Slytherin.
Luke wants to mount a rescue attempt, but Solo isn't concerned until it is pointed out that the princess is rich, and he would get an even bigger reward if he was to rescue the princess.
That's
Gryffindor
exactly
and
what
Slytherin.
Daisy said.
Yeah. They devise a plan to get into the cell blocks. Chewie is put into binders and, dressed as stormtroopers, Han and Luke escort him to the cell blocks. C-3PO and R2-D2 stay in the control room and provide assistance where they can via the communicators.
This is a very long film.
It's
2 hours long.
As with Harry Potter, as a kids' film, it does seem to be quite long, but I do wonder whether that's just nowadays kids' films are really short, and that's just what we get used to.
I did get to the point where I did stop it and go, how far through are we? Because we still haven't got to... we still haven't actually had them get those plans to the rebels yet.
Yeah.
And when I stopped it and looked, it was an hour and a half in. It was 3/4 of the way through the film, and they still hadn't actually got the plans to the rebels. So most of this film is not really the actual plot.
No, there's a lot of stuff that happens that, Han, Luke and Chewbacca make their way to the holding cells. The duty officer there is unaware of a transfer of prisoners and says he will have to check. However, as he moves to do this, the Wookiee breaks free, throws the officer across the room and steals a gun from Solo. They then shoot any remaining guards and security cameras in the cell block.
There were a lot of cameras. We kept seeing another shot out camera, another shot out. They did that a lot, excessively, I think.
And they managed to hit each one first time, which is unusual.
Yeah.
Luke heads down the cell bays looking for Leia's cell while Han tries to and fails to fast talk his way and smooth over the incident with the controllers. A squad of stormtroopers is dispatched to the cell block, and so Luke has to hurry. Luke locates Leia's cell and frees the princess.
Aren't you a little short for a stormtrooper?
Yeah, which is, fair enough. I guess you're about to be killed. It doesn't really hurt to have some sass.
Yeah, Leia's just magnificent in her disdain of her captors. And even when she finds out she's being rescued, she's just like, well...
She's just like, that's
just
my rescuer?
magnificent,
Seriously?
Yeah, it's only when Obi-Wan Kenobi is mentioned that she's like, oh, okay, I might take you seriously then. Because until that point, then you were just laughable.
Vader tells Tarkin that he has felt the presence of Kenobi through the Force. I have felt your presence. You're getting an Xbox. Although Tarkin doesn't initially believe him, saying that Kenobi must be dead by now. A console beeps, and the report of the disturbance at the cell blocks is relayed to Tarkin and Vader. Vader says this is proof of Kenobi being on the station and that he must face Kenobi alone. Cell block is now swarming with stormtroopers, and Han and Chewbacca are forced back down the cell bays to avoid blaster fire. Luke calls up C-3PO on his communicator to see if there's another way out of the cells, but C-3PO reports that there isn't, and that their presence has been noted. There is then a banging on the control room door, much to the worry of C-3PO. Trapped, Luke and Han try and hold off the stormtroopers while they work out their next move. Suddenly, Leia grabs Luke's blaster and shoots a hole in the panelling next to Han.
Because she's awesome.
Yeah.
Much to his annoyance. However, this leads to a garbage chute and their only means of escape, so they all jump down into the level below. They tumble into a room that is knee-deep in water and filled with old detritus.
Water.
Smelly.
I've never really thought about how gross it must be until like right now, and now I'm just absolutely disgusted.
I was absolutely
So,
disgusted
thanks.
this morning.
Han tries to blast the door, but it's sealed, and the blaster bolt just ricochets around until it hits some garbage and is absorbed. Luke feels something brush past his leg and is then dragged down into the water.
Yay, garbage
That's
monster.
Garbage water. As a tentacle wraps itself around the white of his stormtrooper armoured leg.
What kind of
Tentacle.
creature thrives in garbage water?
Well, how could it survive?
I don't know.
It maybe has like a hole somewhere that it goes into when the squishing happens.
Yeah, quite possibly. I mean, the other question is, how did it even get there in the first place?
Maybe it just has the ability to become really like two-dimensional.
Maybe it's like when people flush baby crocodiles down the toilet,
Yeah.
and then they become big crocodiles
No!
in the sewers.
That doesn't happen, Joe.
It happens in space.
Mm-mm.
I mean, actually, it might be there on purpose, because it might be there to eat any organic matter that falls into the garbage chutes and help dispose of it that way.
Oh, so yeah, like environmentally friendly recycling type thing.
Yeah, I'm down
Yes.
with
Well,
that.
that's just way
that's
too
nice.
logical for stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I've only just thought of that as an excuse for why it's in there, but it kind of works.
No, it does work. I
I
like
like
that.
it.
Yeah, no,
I
I
like
like
it.
that as well.
Yep.
Luke thrashes about and is dragged back under a second time before the creature lets him go. Suddenly, the walls start moving as the trash is compacted.
I have a bad feeling about this.
Panic sets in as they try and brace the walls and stop their impending doom. Luke calls on C-3PO, but there's no answer from the control room as its door is blasted open and 4 stormtroopers march into the room. Clonk. Or no clonk, because the clonk came later. C-3PO and R2-D2 have locked themselves in a cupboard. I assume it's a cupboard, I don't know. And when freed by the troopers, they say they are locked in there and their assailants are heading down to the prison level. The stormtroopers, with their usual intelligent self, rush out to investigate, but do leave one trooper on guard at the door. C-3PO picks up the deactivated communicator and convinces the guard to let him take R2-D2 down to the maintenance.
Didn't take much convincing, in fairness.
No, I mean, to be fair, they're droids. No one really pays them much mind, do they?
This droid
Sort of-
broken. Us go fix. Okay.
There you go. They head down to the hangar below and hide out of sight behind a couple of barrels. When they get to the hangar, they realise that no one else is there. R2-D2 plugs into the computer outlet to see if they have been captured, but there are no reports of prisoners. R2 suggests calling Luke on the communicator, and C3 remembers that he turned it
The
off.
idiot.
He's holding it in his hand, like, the whole way. He remembered to pick it up to take it with them.
Yeah, Luke is frantically calling, going, please help, get us out of this thing, we're getting squashed!
Yeah. Once on, the communicator relays the panic of the trash compactor as the walls continue to close in. Luke shouts to have the compactor turned off, R2-D2 frankly trying to comply. But C-3PO believes them to be dying as there are screams from the communicator.
Oh, the screams! The screams!
However, these are screams of joy and relief as the wolves begin to return to their original positions.
Yay!
Luke gets R2 to release the doors and they exit the compactor. In another part of the station, Kenobi sneaks around a corridor into a vast chasm that holds the power controllers for the tractor beam, lowering the controls to the beam as he climbs around.
With the best sound effects.
There's a lot of chasms in this Death Star.
Oh, they have no
and not
railings.
a lot of railings.
Boo!
And in this version, it actually says power controls in English on the
Does it?
screen. Yeah. In the later ones, they changed it to be
In
Auric
Auric Besh. Boo! I just love that sound effect. Boo! Like, you know something's being turned off when it does that, you know?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Back at the
Very
trash
evocative.
compactor entrance, Luke and Han have divested themselves of their stormtrooper armour and head out towards the hangar.
Leia just takes charge straight away then
Yep.
as well. She's like, these
Yep.
Muppets have rescued me so badly, I had to grab their gun and shoot our way out there. Now we're free of the ridiculous place that we had to go because they're such bad rescuers. I'm just going to take charge of this bunch.
She is not overly impressed with them, is she?
No.
But they
Quite
seem
rightly.
to be not, like, wet from the garbage water. So that's just...
No, they take off the armour, and all their underclothes seem to be perfectly dry. And even
impressive.
Princess Leia's outfit, which is a little bit grubby in places, is not what you'd call
Neither's
soaking.
the Wookiee.
No, and the Wookiee... Oh, wet Wookiee hair. That's not
Ew!
really
Oh,
nice.
that's gonna smell. That's gonna smell.
Maybe the exit of the garbage compactor had like a blow dry fan thing.
That would
But her
be an
hair is
amazing
still
feature and weirdly well thought out. So they all actually smell like lilacs at this point.
Yeah, like, we haven't seen that they don't have that, so I'm just going to assume that they do.
I mean, Luke is seen fussing his blonde locks, so it's quite possible.
Yeah.
Stormtrooper Patrol enters the tractor beam control room and 2 guards are placed at the entrance. Kenobi finishes his task and then uses the Force to distract the 2 guards whilst he slips away.
He passes his sneak check.
He does. Stealth check complete. As they make their way back to the ship, Luke contacts C-3PO to report that they're on the level above them, and the droid should sit tight as they come to them. However, they turn a corner and are faced with a small squad of stormtroopers. Han shoots first, again, and with howls of rage, chases the troopers down the corridor.
This is a really odd point. Like, like some kind of animal screaming. He just, like, chases them and they run away.
I suppose, in fairness, it was so unexpected that that would spook you.
If it was Chewbacca screaming and chasing them, I'd understand them running away a lot more.
Yeah, no, it didn't make an awful... It's never made an awful lot
He
of sense.
probably
that
smells
scene.
really
Sometimes-
bad from the garbage.
And
Could
it's
be.
not
Sometimes you just
really
panic,
an idiom
guys.
for him either. He's a run away and look after himself kind of guy.
Maybe he just panicked. Maybe they weren't thinking that hard.
That's his instinct reaction to panic.
It's just
Scream and run towards the danger.
Luke and Leia head off in the opposite direction, but they too quickly run into more stormtroopers.
And a Wilhelm scream.
Yep. Han, still in howling dervish mode, turns another corner and sees a squad he was chasing have regained their composure and are now firing back.
As they've realised it was just a man chasing them. Who's not wearing any armour or anything. Yeah.
What are we doing? Stand your ground, boys. Stand your ground. And it was just a small squad and not, as in the special edition, a whole bunch of stormtroopers and some TIE fighters and...
TIE
TIE
fighters.
fighters.
Well, there were TIE fighters in the ceiling. They weren't actually being shot at. They were just in a hangar.
Okay.
At this point, it's Han and Chewbacca's turn to run away.
Run away,
Sensibly
run
enough.
away.
Smart.
Firing at the troopers behind them, Luke and Leia run through a door. But the floor comes to an abrupt halt and there is another chasm stopping them from getting any further.
With no railings again.
Seriously, who designed this disaster?
With the troopers behind them getting closer, Luke closes a door and then blasts the control panel to stop the door from being reopened. However, this panel also controls the bridge extension, so Luke has trapped them both.
And surely it hasn't blasted away the control panel on the other side, so
Yeah.
they should still be able to open it. It's just that he
Yeah.
can't open it now.
Leia takes the blaster and starts firing at troopers who are shooting at them from another entrance above the chasm, while Luke pulls out a grappling hook from his retained stormtrooper utility belt and throws a long thin rope up to an extended pipe above them. The line catches, and whilst the troopers behind are trying to get through the door, the two swing across the chasm and to relative safety.
Cheesy.
Leia giving Luke a kiss on the cheek, for luck.
Dun, 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 dun. Oh no, wrong movie.
Sisters. Brothers and sister. Brother and sister. Brother and sister.
But we don't know that at this point.
This is
But
true.
in hindsight, I'm still a little bit.
I'm creeped out by the whole film, so you know.
The trailer, which was obviously before the film was released, has the line in it, a boy, a girl, and a romance.
No!
I mean, they didn't have any idea that this was his sister. This was entirely written in the second and third film.
And what was the name of the book that came after this film as well that had them hooking up?
Oh no.
Splinter of the Mind's Eye,
Yeah,
something
that's
like that?
it. Splinter in the Mind's Eye.
No.
Yeah, which was written as a sequel because I didn't think they'd get Empire made, so...
Well, they were trying
Yeah.
to, and they had Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher signed up for the next film, but they didn't have Harrison Ford signed up, so couldn't write Han Solo in the book, and so
Yeah.
it was obviously a romance between the two of them.
So,
Yeah.
did George Lucas not know that they were related, though?
You'd think he would, wouldn't you? You'd think that he'd know that.
At what
But
point did
no.
he actually make that? Did they actually make that narrative choice, though?
Almost as if he was making up as they went along.
You mean he didn't have some sort of magical arc planned out from the beginning that ended up being the final product that we saw at the end?
No, I know. Han and Chewbacca managed to evade the pursuing stormtroopers by leaping through a closing blast door before the stormtroopers can get to it. Elsewhere, Kenobi senses something is wrong and pulls out his lightsaber. He turns a corner and sees Darth Vader, red lightsaber already ignited, waiting for him. They fight. Lightsabers clashing as they exchange verbal barbs.
They fight.
They don't fight very well.
No, they fight really pathetically. I
Yeah.
was thinking this when I was watching it.
From what we've seen of Jedi fights in other Star Wars movies,
Oh, yeah, nothing beats Yoda.
This is a terrible Jedi, and these are meant to be two really highly accomplished Jedi fighters.
It's surprisingly entry level.
It's hand waved away because he's old and Darth Vader is supposedly more machine than man. But this is like a day or three past the end of Rogue One where Darth Vader basically piles through an entire squadron of rebels.
Yeah. I think maybe
no.
he didn't really want to kill Obi-Wan, and that's why he wasn't trying very hard.
I don't know. It doesn't fit particularly well with the other films, but as I say, as a standalone, we'll give it.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Han and Chewbacca make it to the entrance of the hangar, but cannot get to the ship due to the stormtrooper guards. Luke and Leia join them shortly afterwards, and they watch as the stormtrooper guards are distracted by something and all move away from the ramp of the ship.
That was handy.
Convenient plot is convenient. C-3PO and R2-D2 come out of their place of hiding and head towards the ship ramp.
And they're all
while Han,
reunited.
Leia, Chewbacca, and everybody else in this film do the same from the other corridor. However, as they're running to the ship, Luke notices what has distracted the guards when he sees Ben and Darth Vader fighting, and he stops in his tracks.
Conveniently, like, underneath the archway with a nice view to the ship as well, which I thought was nice placement
Dramatic
by them.
framing.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, Darth Vader knew that they would have to go back to the ship, so therefore he could wait for them there. He wasn't going to, hang around one of the random corridors just in case.
Yes.
I think
Corridor
Vader's
3B.
I think Vader's
Yeah.
just got a good sense of panache, really.
Could be. Kenobi notices his friends heading towards the ship but stalling to watch the duel with Darth Vader. He decides to sacrifice himself to help their escape.
If you strike me down now, become more powerful than you can possibly imagine. What? Because he can do ghost talking? What?
He can vaguely mention things and walk around a bit and is particularly ineffective.
And I don't get why he smirks before he sacrifices himself as well. What's the smirk for?
I don't know, I've never worked that out.
And what
He's
happens to Obi-Wan Kenobi's lightsaber?
It falls onto his cloak.
But what happens
Actually,
to it
yes.
then?
I was thinking about this.
Yeah.
At some point, it's either... Well, the thing is that I'm guessing it's probably on the Death Star in a cupboard somewhere when it blows up.
So where is it? Oh, yeah, I suppose if it got
Great.
blown up, yeah.
So unless Darth Vader's got a collection of them in his ship, then it's going to be
I
blown
like to
up.
think that underneath his cloak, like General Grievous, he's got a collection of lightsabers.
From all the Jedi
Possibly.
he's killed.
Yeah.
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 And then he's going to sprout 2 extra arms.
This is why he
And start wheeling
clinks
him
when he
around.
walks.
Yeah.
Kenobi raises his lightsaber in a salute and is scythed down by Lord Vader. But suddenly, the body is gone, and all that's left is an empty cloak and a deactivated lightsaber. Luke screams in disbelief at the old man's death and alerts the troopers to their presence.
Because he's an
Because
idiot.
he's an idiot.
The troopers turn and begin firing at the fleeing fugitives. Luke and Han fire back, managing to hit the door controls and killing the stormtrooper squad, despite never being able to hit anything else previously or again. Luke hears Kenobi's ghostly voice telling him to run, so they all pile into the Millennium Falcon and the ship flies away from the station.
Because he wouldn't have thought to run if he hadn't been told.
No. Luke sits, still in shock at Kenobi's death, while Han runs in and tells them that they have come across the Death Star sentry ships. Luke and Han run to the main guns, while Leia joins Chewbacca at the flight controls. There was a brief space battle where the 4 small TIE fighters, although fast and stinging, proved to be no real match for the larger freighter. The TIEs are destroyed, and the Falcon blasts its way to freedom.
So it was during this that I was like, this film's been going on for quite a long time now.
Yes.
What? And it was 3/4 of the way through, and still no plans to the rebels.
In the Death Star command room, Tarkin asks Vader if the homing signal on the freighter is secured. It's all a trap.
It's a trap!
It's a trap! The gang approach and land at an old temple complex on the forest moon of Yavin 4. Leia is greeted by rebel generals and R2-D2 is plugged into a computer to allow the extraction of the Death Star
How do
plans.
you know the names of all these things? They don't tell you them.
Okay, how many times have I seen this film?
999.
They
and
do
all of
mention
the-
Yavin 4 in there as well.
Yeah.
Do they?
And
Oh.
all
Yeah.
of the
Fall asleep
other
there.
media and everything else.
This is near the end, right?
Getting near the end, yes. The homing device has worked, and the Death Star jumps into the Yavin system and makes its way to the moon, where the rebel base is located.
And that is a
But
moon.
although they can jump through hyperspace, they have to make their way really slowly around Yavin 4 to get to
Yeah.
that moon.
Around Yavin to get to Yavin 4, yeah, I know, it's...
This is too
Was
much
it in
like
another
day jobs.
conference room?
But they've only just literally just got these plans to the rebels, and already they've analysed them and found a weakness that they can exploit. Why has the Empire not noticed the same weakness?
There is a briefing where the rebel pilots are told of the weakness of the Death Star and how to destroy it. However, the plan involves hitting a small thermal exhaust port that is only 2 meters wide, whilst flying at full speed down a trench on the Death Star's surface. Many of the gathered veteran pilots don't seem to think it's possible, but Luke, who has never flown a fighter craft at all, says it's possible because he used to bullseye small rodents at home. Then they were no bigger than 2 meters. I mean, this whole thing makes... This is one of the big problems I have with this film, is...
You have problems with this film?
Why was Luke Skywalker allowed anywhere near a probably quite expensive, quite sophisticated fighter
Because
plane?
he's Mary
Fighter.
Sue.
Mentioned several times to be a good pilot. They've been seeding that as part of the plot throughout the film, that he is a good pilot.
Even so, why would they let him anywhere near the controls?
Because
He's never
they
been in an operation
need
with these people. But they don't need people.
And because Biggs is vouching for him.
It's the same reason that Harry Potter, the first-year student with zero experience of anything, gets to do the most important job on the team for a sport that he knows nothing about. Magical protagonist gets to do the most important thing despite having zero experience, and a whole bunch of other people with, super impressive CVs that you never see are grumbling extras in the background.
Luke follows them into the hangar to be confronted by Han, loading his reward onto a trolley. Luke asks Han to join them, but Han says he needs to pay off some old debts first.
Han says, God damn it, I'm a Slytherin.
Yep, screw you. I want to get myself out
I
of trouble
won't
first.
join the Battle of Hogwarts.
No. Luke stops Leia and assures him that Han has to follow his own path, and that he shouldn't be forced into doing something he doesn't want to. Luke jumps into his X-Wing as R2 is loaded into the slot behind the cockpit. The call to launch is received, and the squadrons of Rebel X-Wing and Y-Wing fighters scream into the sky, and off to intercept the approaching Death Star. The Y-Wing bombers peel off and begin their attack run, whilst the X-Wings provide fighter cover.
But first of all, we have to hear every single person who is standing by.
Yes.
Everybody standing by, and in no particular order. That really annoys me.
Red 7
like-
standing by. Red 3 standing by.
Simply Red standing by.
Red leader,
It's like
standing by.
just do it 1 through 11 or something.
And then our hero, Red 5 standing by. Yay.
At the very end.
Yeah.
Wave after wave of rebel fighters try and fail to reach their target. Finally, Luke's squadron leader managed to get a shot off with his X-Wing, but misses the target and is soon killed by Vader's advanced TIE fighter. It's down to Luke, Wedge and Luke's home planet friend, Biggs Darklighter, to destroy the Death Star and save the rebellion.
Yay!
Luke leads his flight of X-Wings down the trench, pursued by Vader and his 2 escorting TIE fighters. Wedge is hit and has to pull out of the trench, leaving Biggs and Luke to fend off the chasing Imperial forces.
Trench run!
Luke is preparing to fire on the target when Biggs is vaporized by the TIE fighters.
No.
Oh no!
Poor Biggs.
Biggs is dead! In this version of the film, we have no idea who he really is. And
His scene's cut out, and now he's killed as well. It's harsh.
it never made it into any cut of the film, but there was a scene back on Tatooine where Luke and Biggs were having a conversation about Biggs leaving. So you see...
They were mates on Tatooine, and he's telling Luke about this, shush, I've joined the Rebel, and Luke's like, what? The Rebel Alliance? And he's like, shut the f*** up, Luke!
Yeah, so Biggs is destroyed. Not that we know who Biggs is in this.
But Wedge Antilles is fine. I know his name. I don't know
he's
why.
fine.
Yay! I love
He
Wedge.
goes off and becomes a doctor on Casualty.
He's the only one that gets shot, and then he's fine. He can just fly off.
Yeah.
Well, no, Luke gets shot and is fine as well.
Does he?
Yeah, he gets hit and R2 fixes it or something.
Oh, so basically Wedge had a good R2 unit.
Luke dodges and weaves to avoid the incoming fire, but a shot from Darth Vader hits the ship and destroys R2-D2. Luke concentrates on his targeting computer when the ghostly voice of Ben Kenobi tells him to trust his feelings and use the Force.
Use the Force, Luke. Sorry. Daisy and I are on the same wavelength today.
Yes.
Darth Vader takes a shot at Luke, but is distracted by the Millennium Falcon diving down out of the sun, killing one of the TIE fighters and causing the other to stray off course, crashing into Darth Vader's ship, spinning the Dark Lord out into space.
Yay.
Trusting Ben's word, with no reason to, Luke deactivates his computer and takes the shot himself.
Panicking everyone in the Rebel control room.
Luke, you've turned off your targeting computer. I'm fine. I don't care if you're fine. Turn the blooming thing back on. Do as you're told. However, the torpedoes hit their mark, and as Luke, Wedge, the Falcon, and one remaining Y-Wing rush away from the Death Star, it explodes, killing everybody.
Yay.
They return to the Rebel base to celebrate with space cake and lashings of ginger beer.
Space cake! The cake is not a lie.
It's the most delicious space cake there is.
R2-D2 is unloaded from Luke's fighter and sent to repair. They have a huge celebration, and Luke and Han are given medals by Leia.
Han gets loads of credit, even though he
just turns up at the
off.
end, and
turns up at the end when he could have turned up earlier and saved a lot more people.
and yet Chewbacca gets nothing.
Yeah.
No medal for the Chewie.
Well, what exactly is the designation of that medal? Like, is it a gold medal, or is it just like the participant you tried medal?
Completion medal.
What you
I don't know.
don't see is that engraved on it in very small letters is "you tried."
Yeah. Thanks for showing up late. I can't watch that medal ceremony the same way after watching the version that someone did where they took out the music but left like shuffling feet and R2 leaps and things. It's just like the most awkward scene I've ever seen.
Actually, I'm watching the trailer, the original trailer, which is the trailer that was released to the public. A lot of the Foley wasn't in that either, and that sounds an awful lot like people just shuffling around and making noise.
Well,
yeah. All of the temple erupts in cheers. C-3PO and a fully restored R2-D2 join the celebrations as the screen shrinks to black and the titles roll.
Yay!
That's when I wrote that. So I
Why
only
are we
missed the
cheering
cake.
that it's over?
To be continued, possibly. We didn't know at this point. Yeah. So yes, that is Star Wars. Star Wars Episode 4, or just Star Wars as it should be called.
A Star War.
What's weird is, although we don't have it on this list, and many people haven't seen it, but the 1955 movie, The Dam Busters, which is obviously based on real-life events of the RAF attacking dams in Germany, a lot of the dialogue from the scenes where the Lancasters actually are attacking the dams is lifted wholesale and put into the Star Wars scene when they attack the Death Star.
Really?
I have not
Wow.
noticed that. I've only seen
Yeah.
Dam Busters once, and now I want to go and watch it again.
I've never
It's a
seen
good
I was
film.
watching Dam Busters and going, wait a minute, that sounds awfully familiar.
It's a good film.
So they have Red
It's a
Leader
very good
and,
film.
and Red One and...
But then they say Red Leader, but it sings like when they're talking about the number of guns on the towers and on the surface and things like that. It's all directly taken from the Dam Busters. Which I'm sure was done on purpose and was done to sort of, foster a feeling of war films.
Lends
but,
some
yeah.
authenticity.
It feels slightly weird watching the Dam Busters having known the sort of what's said in Star Wars and going, this is weird.
Yeah.
So, but yes, I would thoroughly recommend watching The Dam Busters if you haven't seen it, because it is very good. But again, quite a slow war film in some ways, because the first 2/3 of it are just preparing for the attack, and then there's the attack at the end. Very much like this film in some ways.
I'm not a big fan of war movies, so...
No, fair enough. If it's not your sort of thing, then, I wouldn't force anybody to watch it, unless it was on the list, in which case you have to watch it, but it's not, so you're alright. So yes, that was Star Wars. Obviously, this was the original version, so many things were missing, thankfully, including the frankly horrific scenes with Jabba the Hutt and Han Solo.
And Han shot first.
And some Han shot first, and there were no additional droids and stupid aliens and whatnot in Tatooine.
It was a nice, clean film. Oh, hey, you forgot to mention the death count.
Yes, no, we have a death count for this film. We do. I'm trying to
How
keep a
many
death count for
people
all
were
the films.
on the Death Star when it blew up then?
Death Star population was approximately 1,200,000.
That's a lot
1
of
million.
people.
That's a lot of people.
That's
I mean,
like
it's
the
a
population
it's
of London, isn't it? Or half the population of London?
Yeah, it is a big
large
spaceship.
the
number of
population
people.
of London's like 6 million.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
It's a fraction compared to the 2 billion on Alderaan, but still, like the rebels killed a lot of people there.
Yeah, the death count we have is approximately, and this is approximate because there are estimates on the number of people living in Alderaan and on the Death Star, is 2,112,059.
That's a very exact approximate.
Yeah.
It's an approximate 59 people,
And that
certainly.
includes all the Jawas and Sand People and Greedo and Stormtroopers, etc., etc.
And Crispy Aunt and Uncle,
Yes.
and Ben Kenobi.
And also one arm. Well, technically
And an arm.
C-3PO's arm also fell off, so...
yeah, they got put back
yeah,
together.
Yeah,
they
he
got put
didn't
back
die from
together,
it.
but there was an arm casualty as well.
So yeah, 2 limbs were lost in this film. Or were there
At
more?
least
Was
2
it? Was
limbs.
there more than 2 limbs lost?
No, I think there was just 2. And there was certainly limbs lost in every other Star Wars film as well.
Oh, that's
Hands,
nice.
mainly, isn't it?
Yeah, hands, arms, there was an arm chopped off a wampa. So yes, a death count of around 2,1,200,059.
For what is essentially a kids' movie, that's a high death count.
Yeah.
It's a reasonably high
It's-
body count for a children's movie.
Was it
certainly.
rated 12 at least?
Well, it wasn't 12
weren't
because that
12s
was...
then.
This was a thing... it would have been a PG,
Oh,
I think.
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, or it might even have been a U, to be honest. But it does depend on whether Crispy Uncle and Aunt scene would have pushed it to a PG.
Don't know.
Different
No,
times,
I don't know either.
guys. Different times.
This is
You
true.
feel?
This is
Yeah.
true. So yes, final thoughts on the Star Wars. So Joe, for the bits you managed to stay awake for, what did you think?
I mean, it's not a bad film. It is enjoyable. It's not quite as dated as I thought it would be. I was sort of expecting it to be really dated, like the first Star Trek movie, but it wasn't. It was quite pleasant, and I liked that it was a self-contained story. It sort of gelled really nicely. So there we go.
Yeah, there is always a risk with the things that are known to be trilogies, and even more that actually nothing happens in the first couple of films. Daisy, your final thoughts?
Well, I mean, obviously, I love Star Wars, but there is always a danger with these kind of older ones that you go back and go, but it didn't quite kind of live up to my memories. But it really does for me. I think a lot of that is the fact that the special effects in this were mostly physical effects rather than computer CGI things that very quickly look dated. The lightsabers were the only kind of standout that wasn't, that doesn't quite look as clean as the new ones. But I think this film still, other than the slightly icky bits of brother and sister, when you know that from the future films, I think it really does stand up even now, 40 years on from when it came out. I love it still.
Yep. I can't argue with any of that. As I said, it was pretty much all physical effects, with the exception of, I believe, the computer screens, which were done for when they had the Death Star's plans. They were actually, I believe, they were computer generated, and they're one of the first computer generated things in any film.
Cool.
Which also explains why the plans that they show look nothing like the actual Death Star.
Yeah.
Because in the plans, the laser dish is on the equator, not halfway up the northern hemisphere, because they did not have any time or resources to reprogram it once they had changed the model.
Yeah.
But yep, still stands up. Sammy, last thoughts?
Oh, you know what? It's great.
And I mean, for me, as I said initially, this is a film that I have seen hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of times. I grew up with this film. I've loved it ever since I first saw it. I've loved pretty much all of the Star Wars films. I have never subjected myself to the Star Wars Holiday Special, so I'm keeping away from that.
I honestly can't believe I've seen more of that than you have. I think I saw about the first 15-20 minutes of it before I gave up.
No, I will not watch any of it. It does not exist in my world.
So
I don't even disown the Phantom Menace, but I do disown the Holiday Special.
the Phantom Menace has some redeeming properties that
I'm
make
tempted
it
to
worth
disown most
watching.
of the Phantom Menace, it has to be said. Sorry.
So yes, so that's I love Star Wars. I'm unapologetic about the fact that I love Star Wars, and I always have. So this was an absolute joy to watch this film again. It's not to say that I watched this film specifically for this podcast, because to be honest, I watch it fairly regularly anyway.
He does, I can attest to that.
So yes, that is Star Wars, or at least Star Wars Part 1. We will also be covering Star Wars The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, as well as Episode 1 and
But oddly enough,
The Force Awakens.
Not
Really?
2 and
Wow.
3.
So
No.
2 and 3 were not.
So yes, that's Star Wars. Next time round, we are watching 1935's The Mutiny on the Bounty. So a film I haven't watched at all,
Yeah, me either.
although obviously based on historical
Me
events, I
either.
have a rough idea what
Oh,
happens.
really? It's
And-
based on a true story, essentially, then, is it? Or inspired
Yeah.
by a true story.
So yes, thank you for listening. Thank you to my colleagues again for joining me on this wonderful expedition in time and space, or something. So thank you, Joe.
Live long and prosper.
Thank you, Daisy.
May the force be with you.
And thank you, Sammy.
Insert a catchphrase here from Battlestar Galactica.
Brag.
So say we all. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye!
Thank you for listening to Home Movie Club, part of the That Podcast Thing Network. Find us on Twitter at podcast_thing and on Facebook by searching for That Podcast Thing. Please like and subscribe for news of our future episodes coming soon.
Somewhere in space, this may all be happening right now. 20th Century Fox and George Lucas, the man who brought you American Graffiti, now bring you an adventure unlike anything on your planet. Star Wars.
Here they come. Coming too fast!
The story of a boy, a girl, and a universe. It's a big, sprawling space saga of rebellion and romance. It's a spectacle, light years ahead of its time.
I am C-3PO, human cyborg relations, and this is my counterpart, R2-D2.
Hello.
No sauces, no sauces!
It's an epic of heroes.
Good luck.
And villains. And aliens from 1,000 worlds. Star Wars. 1 billion years in the making. And it's coming to your galaxy this summer.